In today's episode, we have guest Dr. ClauDean Kizart, who is affectionately known as Dr. K and a nationally recognized leader and proprietor of Lightwork Equitable Solutions LLC, a consulting firm that supports schools, nonprofits, and businesses in strengthening organizational climate, cultural responsiveness, and social impact. Dr. K is also the author of Beyond Implicit and Explicit Bias: Strategies for Healing the Root Cause of Inequity in Education, offers practical strategies for building awareness and promoting healing-centered approaches towards equitable solutions for all. Get ready for a very exciting episode.
I'm educational justice coach Lindsay Lyons, and here on the Time for Teachership podcast, we learn how to inspire educational innovation for racial and gender justice, design curricula grounded in student voice, and build capacity for shared leadership. I'm a former teacher leader turned instructional coach. I'm striving to live a life full of learning, running, baking, traveling, and parenting because we can be rockstar educators and be full human beings. If you're a principal, assistant superintendent, curriculum director, instructional coach, or teacher who enjoys nerding out about co-creating curriculum with students, I made this show for you. Here we go. Dr. K, welcome to the Time for Teachership podcast.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm truly grateful that you thought about me and that for the opportunity to speak about my book with your listeners.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, let's frame the episode with that. I think what initially drew me actually to your book, so it's here in my hands, and I enjoyed the whole title, but particularly the subtitle really got me. So this idea of healing the root causes of inequity in education was like, yeah, someone's got to talk about that. So is there anything you want to say kind of broadly before we get into specifics to frame the conversation today around the book?
So I love that you talked a little bit about the title. I can be a little long-winded sometimes. And so initially, there it was definitely some work around like making sure the title wasn't too long, but it was also very specific. And that for me, particularly as a healer, that it focused on healing, right? As a educator, this is my 26th year as an educator. We have a lot of methodology. We have a lot of strategies. We have a lot of different types of curriculum and programs and things of that nature. And one of the things that I have observed is that you can have a lot of programs and you can have a lot of initiatives and you can have a lot of curriculum and you can have a lot of methodology. But if the person who is in charge, so to speak, where there's the administrator or the teacher or the super, if this person who is in charge of carrying the initiative or the program or the curriculum or what have you through has a bias, you will still have inequities, right? And so I think it's really important to discuss these biases. Research says that the more that we discuss biases, the more we're able to see them within ourselves and the more we're able to actually manage them. I think sometimes people think biases are a bad thing or it makes them a bad person, and it's not. Absolutely, positively, it does not. Having a preference doesn't make you a bad person. Right. And so I repeat that, in several stages of my book, because I think it's important to have grace for ourselves and have grace for each other. And in the meantime, while we have grace, to do the work to really heal those systemic inequities in education, particularly, and in the world.
I appreciate so much of what you said. I did not realize that like just discussing them is going to, do all this things. It makes total sense. And I love that there's research behind that.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that, in line with this idea of healing and in line with all of the pieces that you're saying, I love to ask as one of the first questions getting into some content, like in line with this idea of freedom dreaming. Dr. Bettina Love has a great quote around it, right? Dreams grounded in the critique of injustice. What is that big freedom dream that you hold for education?
Love that question. That is a first, and I love it. The goal, if I like to say, if I had a magic wand, right, and talking about freedom dreaming, it would be to have an educational system. Remember, people are systems, so we talk about system. but it's the people who are the system. The system is not like outside of us, right? We are the system. We are the community. So when we talk about how to ensure that as a system we are fostering cognitive development and cognitive thinkers, and making sure that students have a foundation of reading, writing, and arithmetic, and so forth. The goal for me, or the big dream, or the freedom dream for me, would be having that opportunity that is, I can't say without bias, right? Like, that's my first mind wants to say without bias. But when I think about it, bias, Dr. Beverly Tatum says bias is like smog, just everywhere. So it's not that the big dream is without bias. It's in a way where we manage our biases, right? Where teachers are having conversations, and principals and superintendents and instructors and professors are having conversations with each other and with themselves about their own biases, in a way that is healthy and holistic, and in a way that drives us to be better and to do better for our students, right? Whether they are K-12 or college university students. That would be the big dream, like a community of people who are like, oh, like you said before we started, I noticed that decision fatigue bias is a thing for me. After about this time, I don't really make decisions well. If you know that about yourself, how do I then manage that? That would be the big dream. Communities of people who know specific biases, because I think it's not enough to say implicit, or not enough to say explicit, because what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean it's implicit? So talk to me. It's a community of people who would know that there's specific biases. There's over 250 research-based biases, right? That I think any person who is an educator or deals in any form of human services needs to know, as a way of how to better work with people, right? So that would be my big dream. That would be my freedom dream.
I love that so much. And it gets into, I think, the mindset shift that maybe some people are making as they're engaging with this episode, is just bias is not bad. It is just part of things, and we need to learn to identify them and manage them. And that's it. Yeah, I think that's going to be a shift for some people, which is important.
Can I share my other big dream?
Please.
My other big freedom dream is that in teacher preparation programs, there's always a session or conversations around biases. Because in teacher preparation programs, whether it is sponsored through colleges or universities or teacher preparation organizations, I think if we had more conversations, or about intentional conversations about biases with people, like myself and other academics, as well as researchers, who are also practitioners of ensuring that we're managing our own biases, then as teachers go into education, right, and into the field, they're more knowledgeable and more reflective practitioners in that. So that would be my other big freedom dream, is like every teacher preparation program has whether it is not necessarily a module, because I think that we need to have conversations around our biases, not just this electronic click here, do you know this, but have conversations to unpack those, right? But I think my big dream would be facilitating those conversations on large scales with teacher organization groups or teacher preparation groups.
Oh my gosh, I think you're so right. I totally agree, because I do remember there was like a quick module or something in my teacher prep program. And it was just, I mean, reading your book, and I'm also reading Reclaiming Authenticity,
Beautiful.
which is a beautiful companion to read. I read them in the same plane ride as I read your book, and it was this beautiful
Awesome.
kind of conversation. What I noticed is that all of the scenarios you include in your book, and all of the kind of reflections that they have of like these misstep moments, or moments where bias came in, it's just like, those are the learning moments. Like, I need that illustrated, and how better to do that than like reflecting in conversation and sharing story in
Absolutely.
conversation. Like, how
Absolutely.
healing.
And scenarios, right? I don't I think one of the, I got a tad bit emotional because I just feel like we need to prepare our teachers better. Majority of the teachers that I know, like, come into education because they want to work with students. They want to make an impact in the field of education. They want to educate. It's not, some people you hear that if you can't, what do they say? If you can't, whatever, teach. I don't know many people who are like that. Most of the people that I know in education love students and love education and want to make an impact, right? And one of the things that kind of gets me is the preparation part, right? We do the preparation when it comes to, do you know reading methodology? We do the preparation, do you know math methodology? But I think we still need to do a better job, especially now, right? Our country is growing more and more diverse, and I think that those differences and it are part of our strength, right? But I think right now it's about how do we utilize and that as a strength and prepare our teachers to ensure that they are going out into the world of education that they love, to deal with differences in a way that does no harm. I wish we had like a teacher oath, like doctors have a oath. I talk about that in my book, do no harm, right? And I think it's harmful to not know your own biases and just allow that to come out in your day-to-day interactions with students and not stop yourself because you don't even know that you're doing it.
Oh my gosh, yes, so true. And I think so maybe we can do this. Maybe we can just kind of name some of the biases in the book. I don't want to give the whole thing away because people need to go get the book and we'll link to that, of
Get
course,
the
in the show notes.
book.
Yeah, it is so good. But I'm wondering if we can name some of the things for people to start being like, oh, that's what you mean by a
Yeah,
specific type of bias. How does that sound?
absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Are there ones you wanna shout out some of your favorites, or I have my favorites that I wrote down that are like
Well,
really resonated.
let's talk about your favorites.
Oh, okay, great. So I personally resonated with herd mentality and
Mm-hmm.
decision fatigue bias. Like I
Mm-hmm.
could pinpoint both for myself and for people that I've worked with, like, oh, I can pinpoint moment after moment that are tied to those biases.
So I won't say that those two are my favorite, but I will say that those two are, especially herd mentality bias. It is one of the most researched based biases that there is. And actually, herd mentality bias was researched back in the late 1900s. So that's one of the things that I thought was really cool is that biases have been discussed for a very long time and researched for a very long time, but it's like we're just now really scratching the surface on them, right? Which is, I think it's cool, but it's like, okay, we gotta get good part where we are really discussing them specifically and managing them specifically, right? And so in I think it was 1895, there was a French social psychologist who developed, he wrote a book, and in that book, it was called The Crowd, a study of the popular mind. And in that book, he talks about herd mentality, and he compares like herd mentality to like going along with the crowd, right? Hence the name of the book, The Crowd, a study of the popular mind. And so what happens with herd mentality or the crowd, right, is that we tend to agree with people who we may want to impress, or when we are experiencing a sense of maybe insecurity because we don't think that we know as much as another person. They may be in a position of power, or it may be three or four people who are saying the same thing, and we don't have the strength or the know how as to how to engage in a way that is not confrontational, but informational, right? And I talk about an example in my book with me, because that was something that I experienced early on when I was an educator. right? Like there was this conversation about Spanish speaking students. And this was maybe my fourth year as a teacher. And so of course, you're getting to know teachers, you're wanting to be in good community with teachers. And there was a few teachers in the workroom in the not the cafeteria, but like the workspace. And they were talking about a particular student who was Spanish speaking, and one of the teachers said, well, I hate that when they come here, that they even have an option. If you're coming to the country, it shouldn't even be an option. You should speak English. And I knew that we were getting a new Spanish speaking student, and that student was being assigned to that person's classroom. And there were some other things that were said that I was like, man, that's a bias, and how is that student going to be treated? And I'm not saying that person is a bad person, not at all. I'm saying that person's bias as it relates to Spanish speaking people was very evident, in the conversation. And she said some other select things about, when that person gets in class, that they're gonna make sure that they do X, Y, and Z. But it was like it wasn't in a kind way, right? It wasn't how can we get the supports for this student so that, we understand that English is their second language and we're going to have them it wasn't in that way, right? And I didn't say a word, right? I went along with the herd. And then later on, I was just really uncomfortable. So I just stopped eating lunch with them and stopped going into the room, into the teacher workroom, and they were in there. And that wasn't the best way to handle it. At the time, I realized that, and I remember one of my mentors saying, why didn't you say anything? And I was just like, I didn't want to come off as, different. I'm new here. I want to make friends here and that kind of thing. And then fast forward to another incident that I speak about in my book. I was part of this organization, and they started singing "Welcome to the Jungle" when they started talking about a particular predominantly Black school. And I noticed that they didn't have any rhymes for other schools that were not predominantly Black. And I don't know if I go into all the details in the book, so this might be like a special for everybody. So what I did was I went and I called one of my mentors on our break, and I was like, "Listen, this is what I'm hearing. This is what they're saying. It's wrong. I'll be honest with you. I said, I don't want to seem like the angry Black woman, because I was the only Black woman that was in there, only Black person at all that was in there. And I said, I don't want to seem like the angry Black woman and say something, but this is, a new job. And my mentor said, Dr. K, there is nothing angry about you. That's just not who you are. I encourage you to go in there and ask the question. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, ask them, what is it about this school that makes you call this the jungle? Do you have other pet names or pet songs for other schools? And that was the thing. I didn't know how to ask the question or what question to ask. And so now one of my things when things happen is, okay, Dr. K, ask the question. Right. And so that herd mentality bias can be seen in so many different ways, and then it's also called various things. There was another a British surgeon back in 1914 who called it herd behavior. There was Sigmund Freud called it herd instinct. And so it's been like couched under different names, but it's all the same thing. It is going along with the herd. And that can be out of fear for being different, or because, hey, I want to go along and get along, or I don't even know what to say, and I don't want to seem different, or I don't want to make waves, right? But when you're talking about working with students, whether again K-12 or higher ed, sometimes you have to be the person that asks the question, right? We talk about being lifelong learners. Well, we're still learning too. right? And no matter how young you are, listen, you're right, our Gen Zers, no matter how young you are in education, you have something to contribute. So whether if you walk in a room and it's people who have been in education for 20, 30 years, you deserve to be in that room. And your voice is important. You give perspective, you know? And so be okay with knowing that your gift, your presence in that room is a gift to the whole.
Hi, this is Leah popping in to share the free resource for this episode, the Harvard Implicit Association Test. You can find it at the blog post for this episode, www.lindsaybethlyons.com/blog/230. Now back to the show.
And even as a coach, being like, oh, I'm going to like pick my battles. Like, no, that is pick that one and that one and that one. Like say something, ask the question. So I also appreciate that your action step of asking the question is so important. And I love that for folks who are not sold yet, like get the book because it has a whole section of tips of like how to counteract, which I really appreciated. That was like the most heavily annotated part for me. I was like, oh, this is what I need to do. And I think, I mean, specifically too, the decision fatigue one, I read it 2 days ago and I already have in place a system for some of the tips that you had said for decision fatigue. Like I was like, I have a coach. She's going to box me multiple times a day and just be like, did you drink water in the last hour? Like, did you eat food today? Like, so.
That's good. And I love that you took that step. And I love and I appreciate that you are letting listeners know that. And again, the play on words beyond implicit and explicit bias. Like, this is not about, oh my goodness, I have this bias. This is about, oh my goodness, I am biased in this area. And now what do I do? So how do we get beyond that, beyond the shame, beyond the blame and all that other stuff that does nobody any good, right? We have different lived experiences. Okay. We come from diverse and different backgrounds. Okay. And now what? How do we work with that? And it's possible to work with that in a way that is beautiful and beneficial for us all. Yep. So knowing strategies, those strategies are a way to get beyond our biases.
Absolutely. And I know we went really in depth into herd mentality or kind of that herd bias. Do you want to talk just for a little bit around decision?
Sure.
Because what was interesting to me was that I was like, oh, I can see these things happening, but I didn't always connect them to making decisions and the impact on classrooms. Like the one thing I'll just say, I'm going to stop talking and let you talk. The one thing that really got me, I've been talking a lot about equitable assessment lately. And when you were talking about the impact of decision fatigue on grading, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so good. So, I mean, bad, but good that you reveal it for us.
Come on, it's the truth. Let's just be honest. It's the truth.
100%.
100%. And that's part of the work, being honest with ourselves, right? I have been the teacher that has taken, papers home to grade and really just wanted to be on my porch or really just wanted to, do things with my kids. And there may be, or I just schedule a time during that time where I just dive in and grade the papers. Everybody has their thing that they're really great at and their thing that they're just not so great at, right? And for me, it was grading papers, right? The lesson planning and all of that good thing. I really enjoyed that part, the differentiated learning. I really enjoyed that part. But for me, it was the grading the papers. So listeners, don't judge me. We all have our thing that is like, I'm going to take the sweet part, but there's also this part that I just don't like, right? And how do I manage that part that I just don't like about my job? But so with decision fatigue, it's very interesting because this is another bias that was coined back in like 1990, like 1990s, late 1990s, like 1998, early 2000s. And originally the research really had to do with what is called ego depletion. And, ego is that aspect of us that's like, I know I know this. But after a while, you get tired. You get tired. And if we're honest with ourselves, we live in a society, and especially as teachers, there's so much that we have on our plates, right? And we're often stretched very thin, right? And sometimes there are some school districts that are doing a great job with reminding people about wellness and self-care and things of that nature. And there's some that are like, we don't even have time. We got to keep it moving. And if you think about that in your own personal life, sometimes we're like, I got to keep it moving. And I may or may not eat until, in the evening, where I'm realizing, wait a minute, have I drank water? There's no way you can expect yourself to make quality decisions all day when you have not taken care of your physical, emotional needs. It's impossible, and it's nothing we need to feel bad about. It's something we need to manage, right? The original research, which is interesting, about decision fatigue bias actually happened in the judicial system, and I talk about that in my book as well. There was a study that showed that parole board judges usually grant parole significantly more in the morning, right, when we're fresh, right, compared to the end of the day. So think about it. You may have two people who are up for parole for the very same thing. This study showed significantly, not just slightly, significantly more, that if that person who went up for parole for the same thing, same circumstances, may get parole if they go early in the morning. If they see that judge early in the morning. And if that same person came back at the end of the day for the exact same thing, exact same circumstances, race, color, creed, and all that, would probably get a different outcome with the parole. And so that was the basis of the study originally, when it first came out back in, like I said, back in 1990s. And so now there's more and more research, including the research that's in my book, about how that impacts teachers and administrators.
I'm thinking about that immediate parallel too. I think this might have been a fictional scenario that you wrote, or maybe it was a real one, where like a principal is, giving the suspension to the third kid in the day that has like graffitied the wall or the desk, right? And it's like the first kid, it's okay. For next kid, it's okay. Would everyone just stop graffitiing? Like suspension. And like that is so real. Like that is so real that is either at the school level or the teacher level that happens. And it's such a potentially simple thing that's like, if that teacher ate lunch or that principal ate lunch or had like 10-minute walk to like free their mind a little bit and just take a breather, like all these little tips that you give to actively take care of yourself may interrupt that bias. It's wild that is like, that's what we can do. And that's what a gift to give ourselves and everyone around us.
I love that. What a gift to give ourselves and everyone around us. Absolutely. 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 Yep.
Thank you for just breaking this down for us. You take so much research, distill it so succinctly, and then give us real, like really tangible, like I connect so deeply to all these scenarios we've probably
that was the goal. So I'm really happy that you get that, because that was the goal, not to make it too short, not to make it too long, but to make it palatable, because again, we teachers, we often have a very full plate. And so I think that my book is a companion piece. It's a discussion piece. It's a book study piece. It's a piece that can be used in schools, all around the country, all around the world, just, as a book study, as a way that from instructional coaches, and, it's various ways that I think the information in my book can be used, because, my grandmother used to say, it's a sorry dog that don't wag its own tail, right? And so I say this, yes, because I wrote it, but also because I wrote it with teachers, with educators in mind, right? I've been a classroom teacher. I have worked in higher education. I've been an administrator. So I wrote this with educators various capacities in mind. And so even if you notice the scenarios, there's different scenarios with different people, with different types of educators and different types of students. All that was done on purpose, because I want everyone to be able to see themselves, but see themselves with some grace, in a way that encourages change. You don't have change through shame and guilt and blame. You have change through grace.
Yeah. And it doesn't serve anyone to just sit in the shame and blame, right? Yeah. So thank you for that.
Or to just tell me that I'm biased and not give me strategies. Like, what do I do with that?
Yes, such a good point. Yes, such a good point. And so I think, folks are going to order the book as they're listening, and while it is en route to them, I'm curious, what is like one thing they could do as they end the episode to just kind of start thinking this way, practicing some of the stuff that we've talked about and that's in your book? Like, what's like kind of a one thing they could do in the next hour?
In the next hour. So if I was better at social media, and I will get better at social media, I would say follow me at Doc Kizart, because I'll talk about different types of biases, on my social media. I'm knocking on 50. I'm not saying I'm not young, I'm not old. There are certain elements of social media that I'm getting used to and starting to learn more about. And so I recognize that that is a good platform for learning. And so one of my goals is to utilize that platform better. So if I was a listener, I'd say, listen, I'm going to go follow Dr. Kizart on social media to learn more about these various types of biases. The other thing, that I would recommend is to take the Harvard Implicit Bias Test, right? It's completely free. You can just do a quick Google search for Harvard Implicit Bias Test. They have several categories of tests that you can take. Some of them are religious, some of them are political, some of them are race and ethnicity, but it's a wonderful way to get insight about we talk to our students all the time about metacognition, thinking about your thinking. It's a wonderful way to think about our thinking. And especially now when we find ourselves kind of like there's some polarization happening, right? And I'll just speak on it. There's polarization happening where people think that, well, if you supported this person in office, then you're a bad person. If you didn't support this person in office, then you're a good person or a bad person or whatever. And we're coexisting. We're working together, right? And so I think that implicit bias test on politics is really important for us all to take, because we're coexisting, but we don't, like, if we're not consciously aware that I may be saying and doing things because I know that you did support this person or you didn't support this person, or all these changes are happening. And so now, I think it's important that we know how we are showing up in our communities, in a way that, like I said, it extends grace, but in a way that is honest. And sometimes if we're honest, we can't always do that for ourselves. It helps to have tools. We give it to our students, we need to give it to ourselves.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so important. And I'll close with these two questions. I think you've kind of touched on them a little bit. We'll do kind of a lightning round. One, what is something you've been learning about lately? You did mention being a lifelong learner, right? We all are. So I'm curious. It could be professional related or just totally not professional related.
Crocheting.
Fun.
I've been learning about crocheting. I have a niece, Nazari, and we were at Michael's not too long ago. I live in Virginia, and they live in Chicago, and I went to go visit, and I said, "Oh, I can make you, Tati ClauDean, make me a scarf." And I was like, "Yeah." So we went to Michael's, and she wanted a pink and purple scarf. Well, I have never integrated colors before, so I was like, "Oh my goodness, how am I gonna make a pink and a purple scarf?" Like I don't even know. So I am learning how to integrate colors when crocheting.
That is beautiful. And thank you for the backstory of the answer. Loved it. And then finally, I think you mentioned this a little bit, social media, but where can people connect with you? Is that the best place to go? Is there a website? We'll drop a link to the book, of course, as well. And
Yes,
then,
absolutely. So you can purchase the book on solutiontree.com. It is a publishing company. You can also purchase the book on Amazon for people who are still like, hey, I'm an Amazon. What is it? Amazon night? Making up words now. But you can purchase it on Barnes and Noble, has it on their website as well. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Dr. ClauDean Kizart. You can also connect with me via email at DocKizart, DocKizart@gmail.com. You can follow me on Instagram at DocKizart on Instagram. I do work with schools as a consultant to support schools and facilitating assessments and facilitating courageous conversations around biases and things of that nature. Not sorry, Mr. Singleton, I know I said courageous conversation, and that might be proprietary for his organization, but having conversations around navigating through biases, ensuring that and again, I also want to say this before we go. Biases is not a DEI thing. Hear me well, right? Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I understand that there are schools and school districts who really are being mindful about and have to be careful because of legislation regarding saying things like inclusive or equitable or, things like the DEI stuff. My book is not just a DEI book. My book is again, think about it. Many of these biases were discussed and researched way before the field of DEI, right? Way before. My book is a school improvement book. My book is a reflective practitioner book for educators, irrespective of what level of education you're in, be it administrator, new teacher, classroom teacher that's been in school, that's been an educator for 1 year, 2 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? I want to make sure that readers also understand that that you can read this book safely, right? Your school can order this book and have book studies and book conversations. You can call on me to come support your schools with understanding how to navigate through their biases and things of that nature, because it's not a DEI book. This is a school improvement and how to close achievement gaps book.
appreciate that. And for the people who are super into like anti-racism and DEI, like the implications are very clear for doing this work, getting good results.
Absolutely. I think, unfortunately where we are in life, it's important. And then you said something about anti-racism, right? Mm-hmm. I am often very mindful when it comes to associating my work with anti-racism because I'm pro people, right? I read this book a while ago about, I love like Buddhist philosophies. And one of the things that I read in this book, it's How to Love, is like sometimes, and then there's another book, it's about the art of compassion. And it talks, and one of the things that they say is whatever you're hyper focused on is what you see. And so I was like, huh. And so they talked about like racism and anti-racism as an example. This was some years ago that I read this. And they were like, if you're focused on being anti-racist, right, then, and this is just for me, like just how I conceptualize things, then your focus, then you're looking at things through a lens of race and racism, right? For me, I don't know about everybody else, and everybody has their lane. In my lane, I look at things through a pro people, right? Not an anti anything, but a pro people. How do we, as people who have differences, whether it's differences of race, ethnicity, gender, socialization, socioeconomic ability, height, weight, and lookism, and all that other kind of stuff. How do we still work together right? And to me, that's not anti anything. It's pro people.
Thank you for that. You've given me a lot to think about. Appreciate that. And with that, thank you so much for the entire conversation. I've enjoyed your book so much. I've enjoyed this conversation so much. And thank you, Dr. K. Appreciate being with you.
You're welcome. And thank you for having me. I truly appreciate that.
If you like this episode, I bet you'll be just as jazzed as I am about my coaching program for increasing student-led discussions in your school. Shane Safir and Jamila Dugan talk about a pedagogy of student voice in their book, Street Data. They say students should be talking for 75% of class time. Do students in your school talk for 75% of each class period? I would love for you to walk into any classroom in your community and see this in action. If you're smiling to yourself as you listen right now, grab 20 minutes on my calendar to brainstorm how I can help you make this big dream a reality. I'll help you build a comprehensive plan from full-day trainings and discussion protocols like Circle and Socratic Seminar to follow-up classroom visits where I can plan, witness, and debrief discussion-based lessons with your teachers. Sign up for a nerdy, no-strings-attached brainstorm call at lindsaybethlyons.com/contact. Until next time, leaders, think big, act brave, and be your best self.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.